Welcome back to Star Wars News Net. My name is Tyler, joined on this early weekday podcast with my good friend Miguel for a podcast that we are very much looking forward to. We've planned this out in advance for you all, and this is going to be fun. We are going to be talking about 5 series for Disney Plus Star Wars that Lucasfilm should or should not do. And we're going to decide here right now whether or not these are ideas they should move forward with, or if they are ideas that, you know what, put that back in the trash can, put it back, fold it up. It doesn't need to go any here. Wad it up, throw it away. However, you also in the comments let us know what you think about each of these ideas. We're going to go in timeline order on them. So if you get, through the first 3 and you haven't heard your big one yet, if it comes along further in the timeline, don't worry, we'll probably have a place for you. Miguel, how are we feeling? Are we ready to go? Are you excited to talk some Star Wars this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just want to say, I really hope that Lucasfilm is not listening to this and is not paying attention, and they actually tell original stories that we didn't think of,
Yes,
just
because
for a
some of these
change.
some of these we're going to be turning down very quickly too. We're going to be turning
Yep.
these down. But at the other hand, I have to apologize immediately right now if
Oh
my
no.
voice sounds like it is going away a little bit throughout the podcast because we had basketball practice. It was our last practice before our first game. And the way I run practice, Miguel, is I got the speaker blaring. We are blasting music, okay? And we're moving really quick. I had some of the boys from the boys basketball team stay after school to run through some stuff against my girls. And so my voice goes quickly. Like I'm yelling over the music. I'm pausing the music. I'm yelling at us because we got things going on. Like I'm super into it. So I might not have a voice for the next few weeks now that the season started. So I'm apologizing in advance if it disappears at any time. I'm just letting you know.
I see.
I also
No
wanted to give
worries.
you I also wanted to give you the platform right now if you had any quarrels to pick on the Oscar nominations from this week. If you had anything you wanted to get off your chest, you have a moment here to do so before we get started.
Um, so I mean, obviously, like something like nominating something like Wicked, I was a bit shocked about. I just don't think the movie's that good, but Uh, I was expecting it, so that's okay. I was a bit surprised about Nickel Boys sneaking into Best Picture, for example. I haven't seen it, but I was a bit surprised. But what I was a bit upset about was the song from The Wild Robot not getting in.
Mm.
You remember the Kiss the
Oh,
Sky
oh yeah.
song from The Wild Robot?
Mm-hmm.
That I thought that was a lock for winning. So. I mean, it's probably gonna be one of the Emilia Perez songs, but I was a bit surprised that the Kiss the Sky one didn't get in. And now
I've
it's
seen so
like,
many memes about from like I think it was someone put out there, I forgot who. It was the meme of Hux on the ground and said, I don't want any other movie to win. I just need Amelia Perez to lose. So that's all I saw. That's what I saw.
it.
And so I
I also like about that movie. I'm just shocked about how much the Academy loves it. Not only because of pretty much the hate that is evergreen, ever present online about it. Like pretty much everyone on Twitter hates that movie. I actually liked it, but I'll be honest, issues aside. But like, it's so weird. It's such a weird movie. It's so so different from what the Oscars usually like nominate, which is typically like the archetype of a movie that they nominate is like something like The Brutalist, and that's probably gonna bode well for it on Oscar night. But I mean, Emilia Perez getting it was like, and with that many nominations and being, one of these most serious contenders, I was, I am generally quite surprised about that. And also, like, this is time for me to start campaigning for Anora. I just want that movie to win so badly. It's probably gonna get it like, original screenplay, and that's it.
Mhm. We'll see. You never know.
Yeah.
Don't count yourself out till the votes have been cast
And
and
also,
the winner has been announced.
yeah, and I haven't seen this movie still. I will see it soon, but the fact that Margaret Qualley was nominated for The Substance, like we could have gotten a Margaret Qualley nomination, and we didn't. So
Hmm.
that's a bit of a shame. Yeah, and I
So
haven't
I'll
seen
be
the movie,
excited.
so
Okay. I know that there's a few. I need to see Anora's the one I want to watch. So they'll be putting it back in theaters over here, I'm sure, as the season gets closer for the awards. But here we go. 5 shows that Lucasfilm should or should not adapt. And here we go. First one right here. And we just left the Acolyte. And the big thing at the end of the Acolyte was Darth Plagueis. So should Lucasfilm develop a Darth Plagueis show centered around him training a younger version of Palpatine? What are your immediate thoughts?
so my immediate thoughts are no. I Although I will contradict this, I generally want to stay out of the Skywalker saga main characters, and that would
Mm-hmm.
include Palpatine here. It's a bit of a different story. It's like yeah, Palpatine is one of the main players from the movies, but that this is would be like quite different from what we're used to in spin-off stories from those main characters. I mean, like something like Obi-Wan or you know
Mm-hmm.
even Andor. This would be quite different, but still, I don't feel the urge for this story personally, given how the Acolyte performed, and I guess that's not the best example because that underperformed because of so many different reasons. But I think that right now there's a bit of a stain on Plagueis, and perhaps they should ice this idea for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
revisit this in 5 years maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or 4.
I I agree with you to an extent. However, I don't think there's a stain on Plagueis. Essentially, what I think everyone took from that was why did we not get Plagueis sooner? Why have we not gotten more Plagueis before? Because, and I, granted, I probably live in a little bit of a bubble on this because I've mentioned this before. I will say it again. I will say it again 1,000 more times. When I saw His Royal Highness on screen for the first time, I was absolutely thrilled, but I was also frustrated because going into the finale of that show, they hadn't announced, that there wasn't going to be a season 2, but you could feel that just with everything going on, the numbers that were coming out, that it was a long shot that this was going to be continuing on in some way. And so but from what I saw is I think people were genuinely happy to see Darth Plagueis in live action, and they were excited to learn more about the character. So I think that if they were to pivot and adapt and move on with his story, I think there might be some people who really enjoyed the Acolyte that might be okay. This is kind of a version of this show that is going to continue on because you still have Darth Plagueis continuing, and you showed that in season 2. While there are some detractors that are finally going to be like, yes, we're really going to actually get the dark side show that we're wanting with one of the most legendary, Sith lords out there in terms of the lore of Star Wars. The only way that I am a little bit hesitant on like a show like this, it kind of depends on the backstory of that they give Palpatine because we don't really know a lot of Palpatine's main backstory in terms of canon right now. We know he comes from like a wealthier royalish family of Naboo, and that he becomes senator. He does all these things, but what I really don't want them to do, and I'm worried that they're going to do this like Disneyfy him in a way of he had a really troubled childhood, or there were some things that happened to him that turned him on this dark path, and Plagueis took advantage of that and twisted his mind to force him into the path that he wanted him to take. And I really don't want to have any sort of sympathy story built in for Palpatine. I just love the fact that he is pure evil. he is just this evil character we have to take down at all costs. And I kind of want him to stay that way. And if they were to tell the story geared a little bit around there, I would be a little more excited. Like I want absolutely no redeemable qualities for him whatsoever.
I don't think that's the way they would go
Hmm.
down. I think that more than Disneyfy the series, this is mostly like whenever you get like a cool down version of what you should have gotten,
Hmm.
something like the Aqua, for example, I think that's mostly Filoni. I think that's mostly Filoni saying, this is not exactly something that aligns with, George's idea or whatever. I don't think Palpatine runs that risk because
Right.
he is pure evil.
Hmm.
He is pure evil to Filoni as well. I don't think a Disney executive would interfere much there. At the same time, whenever you say that, oh, this is the, dark side show we should have gotten, would people really say that, or would people say, oh, they're gonna screw this up also,
Hmm.
just like they did last time?
Well, is there a single show out there right now that they could announce at this very moment where a lot of people in the fandom are going to say, "Oh, they're going to screw this up now, aren't they?" I think that right now the way that the climate is and the temperatures at with Star Wars, they kind of need to just trust in their decisions that they're going to make and tell the best story that they can versus being worried about optics or PR too much from the initial release. I think that whenever you announce something, if it's a celebration and they announce their next live action show a couple of years down the line, I think you just weather whatever storm comes with that, whether it's really positive or negative. You trust that Andor is going to give you a really good boost. You trust that Mandalorian and Grogu is going to do what it needs to do, and the vibes around Star Wars by the time this comes out in a couple of years will be drastically different than maybe where they are at the end of 24, early 25.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I was just going off your point that
Mm-hmm.
people would react this way. I don't think that's the way they would react, but uh,
It's possible.
yeah,
It's possible.
I like
I would rather if they focused on Plagueis, even making focus on Plagueis from a standpoint of you don't necessarily have to bring Palpatine in until the very end of the show. Like it ends with him in being meeting Palpatine and taking Palpatine as his apprentice versus just the two of them following the two of them. That's probably what I would lean more of. But if you're gonna get the maybe the casual audience to buy into it more, you kind of need the Palpatine name, there. So that's probably where they would go. But I would actually prefer to do a pre-Palpatine Plagueis show, and then maybe it ends with him bringing on this new apprentice.
would you do
Personally,
an adaptation of the novel, or would you just go full original?
hmm I think that there is so much juicy stuff in that novel that you should absolutely do some level of adaptation. You take things in and you don't change everything up, but that novel there's a lot of that novel is with him and Palpatine together. Like most of that novel is the two of them together, and then it ends with Palpatine killing him right as he becomes Chancellor. And I think it might be more interesting if you did a Plagueis having to, like, there's the part of the book. I don't Have you read this book?
I have not, but I have read enough about it that I am
Mhm.
familiar with what happens in
Right.
it.
So you have Plagueis and Tenebrous' master, and you know Tenebrous, when once he dies and Plagueis is moving on. There's like this other secret apprentice that Tenebrous had, or he was training, and Plagueis basically has to kill that guy too. Like there's a lot of really fun things you could do there as Plagueis is beginning his own personal journey after he moves on from his master and then kills the other apprentice. I mean, there's plenty that you could adapt, and then you gives you plenty of room as well to just tell whatever story that you want. You just have some major beats from before. I think that might be a fun story to tell. Do a little bit of both, but I don't know. Whatever they decide, I would just would love to see more Plagueis stories, honestly.
So one final question: should they do this? Do you think that perhaps the best news that would be attached to it would be to bring in James Luceno?
If he's brought in to be a part of this. I think that helps you win immediate favor with some loud voices online that are going to be maybe championing, you know, some of the legend stuff. They've been always on that, but I think the group of people that are really loud about those sort of things, they're like a very small number of people actually though. Like I don't think there's a lot of people that care enough that care about Star Wars and are also these legends gatekeepers that, we need to have all these legends people, brought in. I don't think that number is as high as maybe other people think. It'd be one of those things. It wouldn't hurt, but I don't think it's necessary to say you have to bring in James Lucino to appease certain people or make sure the story is just right.
I mean, yeah, but this is like the conversation that we have multiple times that, yeah, those people might be a small number, but first of all, how loud are they? And second of
Hmm.
all, uh, how far can they reach? Because
Hmm.
typically, like, yeah, they can be a few of them, but if enough people listen, and it's not like they are convinced that, um, they're doing this wrong, but it's mostly about the narrative that they generate
Hmm.
through
Right.
posting and the overall tone that surrounds a series or a movie.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think that would give this show, should it happen, a big boost.
Hmm.
I also don't. I mean, I don't think that business-wise they should do it. I don't think there's enough incentive in there to move
Hmm.
forward with this. But story-wise, I could see it. So I'm gonna say a no, but I something that I would definitely be interested in should they do it.
I'm gonna say yes, just because you've established Plagueis in live action very briefly, and this is a way maybe they could turn what seemed like a loss into a bit of a win if this works. So let's move on to the second one, and this was your idea, and I was very surprised that you mentioned this one. I was very surprised that you went here, but I kind of dug the idea. I would love to hear more about what you have to say. And that was doing a Count Dooku miniseries of sorts. And obviously, it could be pretty easy to do at times of Count Dooku as a Padawan or a youngling or whatever we want to do, because Yoda being his master means that you don't have to hire, someone to come in and play that character we've seen before. And Count Dooku is very young, so you have Yoda that would be a part of this show. You could hire someone to be a young Qui-Gon Jinn, because that was Count Dooku's apprentice. There's a lot here that you could play with, and then ultimately, depending on how far this series stretched, you could stretch it all the way out to right before the Clone Wars, and just hire a new, person to play an older Count Dooku and bring in the Emperor. You could have Ian McDermott reprise his role as the Emperor for a couple of scenes and show Count Dooku behind the scenes for the Separatists. But what made you bring up this idea? Was it you were like, oh, this there's some meat on the bone here, or was it, what, this is an untold story in the timeline?
Right. So this is where I would make an exception of moving away from the Skywalker saga. Um, just because this arc was for me the most interesting one from Tales of the Jedi. I thought
Hmm.
that the corruption, or rather realization by Count Dooku that the Jedi way was not the best, or that the Jedi had gone away from their
What they were
initial,
supposed to be, yeah.
path. Yeah, um, that first of all feels very different from what Star Wars has done so far, at least under the Disney era. Outside of that,
Hmm.
three episode miniseries, or a 3 episode arc. Um, so that feels first of all unique. So you're not repeating what came before,
Right.
and as long as you build upon what was written into that animated arc, I think there's a lot of interesting commentary to be had with that series. I think there's a lot of political commentary, not even like Um, I mean, you obviously angry some fans, but you know,
Of course.
there's also like some meat on the bone there,
Hmm.
politics wise, and also, it's
What
just
in terms of a
a
miniseries?
fascinating story.
Mhm.
Yep.
What would you propose? Like when I think of this, I think of like 8 episodes where it's a couple episodes with him younger, following him and Yoda, a few episodes of someone new training Qui-Gon, and then like a few episodes in the heart of either right before the Clone Wars, like right around what we saw in Tales of the Jedi, or even you could tell something like during the Clone Wars with him. Any number of options there. Or would you rather this be just a continuous series with one main actor that's leading the way
No,
during a
what you
specific
said
time?
the first time. Yeah, probably what you said. I mean, the latter could be like you could have a specific moment in time, let's say, a couple months spread out through 8 episodes, and throughout like the actual time he realized that the Jedi way was not
Mhm,
the one to go by, to go down, and then do flashbacks and perhaps even like move forward from time to time.
mhm,
That could be an interesting way. But yeah, my initial thought was doing something like, yeah, an episode or two as a young apprentice, and then, perhaps a young Qui-Gon, and then move on to the moment of
mhm.
uh, perhaps even
Well,
bleeding
there's
the lightsaber or whatever.
there's another thing I didn't even think of, another character. We could get live action Asajj Ventress with this because he
Right.
clearly takes Asajj under his wing to train her up to be his number one assassin, teach her the ways. And that would be another way I think a lot of people would get excited of seeing Ventress in a live action setting. You could have some exciting lightsaber combat with the two of them, as well. Him, teaching her the hard way. There is the book or the audio drama like script. I've read the script and it was Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott, and that is excellent. Like I really enjoyed reading that. And I did not think that Count Dooku's never been one of my favorite characters or someone that I was drawn to, like, oh, I need more stories of this. But I read that and I left with a really, really greater appreciation of the character and being more excited to the open ideas, I guess, of having more stories told. So when you first mentioned this, I was kind of like, all right, Count Dooku, sure, whatever. But the more we have talked about it here, the more I kind of think that this might be the easiest win for them in a live action setting because you're not committing to multiple seasons of something. You don't have to worry about drawing that out. You have a very clear beginning, you have a very clear ending, but you can still be pretty original in the stories that you tell within that because there's virtually no stories out there about what did Dooku and Yoda talk about? What did they get into when they were together? Outside of the Tales of the Jedi arc, what other missions did Dooku and Qui-Gon go on together? Like there's nothing there. Outside of Tales of the Jedi arc and some Dooku Jedi Lost, really, there's what relationship did Dooku have with the Order when that happens? Because we see in Tales of the Jedi him going and um, altering, the Jedi archives. But, there's a story to be told with all of that in live action, as well that you could tell with him orchestrating some of the Clone Wars. So, yeah, I actually am gonna say if we want to bring it to our verdict here, unless you have anything more to add, I think they should do this. I think this is something that should happen. I would put this above the Palpatine Plagueis story, actually, because I think this one has a very clear. You're not going to get a lot of backlash necessarily to something like this.
Yeah, not necessarily,
Might
unless
be
they
safer.
recast Dooku as a transgender, something like that, where it's like,
Mhm.
just forget. No, no, I'm kidding.
Where people just lose their minds over something. Yeah.
Yeah, or you cast an actor with blue eyes and Dooku has green eyes or something like that.
Right.
I don't even know. Um, I do think that they should do this. But speaking of actors, do you have any in mind for a young Count Dooku?
No,
Okay.
I
Neither,
have
but
no
per,
idea. I have not even thought about that for a second. I don't know.
perhaps
We
some other day
when
we
they
can.
announce this at Celebration, when they announce this at Celebration in
Right.
April, we'll come together and we'll figure out who our dream order is for the young Count Dooku character.
All right.
Okay, so we're
Should
both
we
in on
move
the
on?
Count
Yeah.
Dooku miniseries. Let's move on to number three, and that is the live action Clone Wars miniseries that ever since the episode in Ahsoka, where we saw the World Between Worlds and we saw some live action Clone Wars for a few minutes, everyone I've seen online is like, oh my gosh, how do we not do a live action Clone Wars? Followed immediately by the person in the comments going, why don't you just watch the actual animated show? And so the question really just comes down to, do we need more Clone Wars? Like, is this something that Lucasfilm should do because we need it? Or would this just be a, you know what? If we bring Ewan and Hayden back, no one's going to complain. This is an easy win. We just do 6 episodes, 3 episode arcs from Clone Wars, and we can just kind of play in that sandbox again. If you're going to do it, it has to be now because Ewan and Hayden are only getting older, and you have Ariana Greenblatt there ready to play a younger Ahsoka. If you wanted to do that, you could easily bring Tamar Morrison back, be some clone, voice some clones. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Where are you on this one?
Please no. Please no live action Clone Wars. Nobody needs this. You may think you need this, but you only want this. And there is no story reason to go back to the Clone Wars because we've had, what, 7 seasons of this? And pretty much everything that was supposed to be told
Mhm.
has been told. And the
Seven
only
seasons
thing,
of
the
Clone
only
Wars.
reason to do this would
Hmm.
be fan service, which Star Wars should not be driven by, should be driven
Hmm.
by original stories that come from the heart and not,
Hmm.
something like scoring points with the fan base.
Hmm. Seven, 7 seasons of Clone Wars. You have 3 seasons of Bad Batch that deal with some of the aftermath of Clone Wars, especially even Star Wars Rebels deals with a lot of the aftermath of Clone Wars with bringing in Rex and other Jedi. You have Ahsoka that comes in there. There's so many little branch offs from the Clone Wars and the clones that we going back is definitely, I'm with you. This would just be we just want to win some points with the fans for a minute, so we're just going to spend, $120 million on giving them something that might keep the
Or
haters
more.
quiet for a little bit or more, or more when you think about the cost of DHing all of the main people involved in the
Well,
project and the scale
unless
of
they
having these giant battles.
Right, yeah, unless they DH them the Obi-Wan Kenobi way, which is just try to pretend that they're try to pretend that they're DH, but they're really not,
Just give them the same haircut and hope
Yeah,
that you just kind of ignore the fact that Anakin's supposed to be what, like 19, and he very clearly
yeah,
looks like 40 years old.
yeah.
I still blows my mind. I don't understand how Obi-Wan Kenobi just it ended up with it almost it so you know what I actually attribute Obi-Wan Kenobi to is that was Deborah Chow when she is trying to come up with the story and when they have the budget, they're getting the budget for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Was she walking around like Director Krennic at Lucasfilm headquarters asking for some spare credits and some spare poppers to be able to put a little bit more into the show, like Krennic going around begging people for Death Star funds because he was drastically under budget, so he didn't have enough money to fund the project. And every time I hear about how Obi-Wan Kenobi with a fraction of the budget as some of these others, I just wonder how like they could have made the series look as not I don't want to say cheap, but in terms of visual appeal, it might be my least favorite looking live action show that we have from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of the budget that how much the budget is responsible for that, or how much, the actual
Mhm.
DP is responsible for that, because if you get 30
Mhm.
million dollars more into the budget, does the series look better, or is just a matter of lighting
Right.
and a matter of, uh, you know, giving more time to the visual effects to be polished.
Hmm.
I don't like. I don't know what the budget was destined for. The series, yeah, was the budget was less than others, but it also had fewer episodes than say Skeleton Crew, for example. I think the per hour budget is still higher on Skeleton Crew, but that also needs to be accounted for. And I mean, there's also like even beyond the actual budget, like how much of that budget was destined for something like someone like Ewan McGregor for his
Hmm.
salary, both as an actor and executive producer,
Hmm.
Uh, and then there's something like Andor, which cost like apparently the GDP of a small country. And does the series look good because of that budget, or was that budget spent on, or did they actually
Hmm.
overspend
Hmm.
left to right? I
Hmm.
think the latter,
Hmm.
but I guess I wasn't on that set and I wasn't on that
Not
the,
yet.
the accountant responsible for that.
Not yet. We'll see. We have a long ways to go here in 2025. You may just get your wish before too long. And actually, would you? I don't think you'd want to be the accountant for any of these projects. So.
No, I don't think so.
So I'm with you. Live action Clone Wars seems it's one of those great ideas that you have with your buddies when you're sitting around, maybe
Yeah,
having a beer, and you're talking about, man, wouldn't it be awesome? We just got a couple episodes like this where you talk about it. You're like, yep, that's a great idea. You leave 2 hours later, you're going, you never think about that again. Like that's that, or when
yeah,
you think about it, you're like,
exactly.
no, that's not really what we really need. It's a good
And I
talking
just
point.
like that looks like that is a great idea for a 10-minute flashback like we had in Ahsoka. I
Hmm.
don't think the shtick works for 8 episodes or 6 episodes or whatever. Like at that point, you're just cherry picking from whatever highlights you had in that show, like some uh, big scale battles between two armies, or um Hayden talking to Ewan, but it's not like you're gonna uh, make that much of the rest of the series. I don't think.
Right.
I just
Hmm.
think that is a very cheap idea, cheap in terms of
Hmm.
just scoring points with the fan base and not really
Right.
caring for something story wise.
So we're both saying no on live action Clone Wars. Moving on to this one. Pretty interesting idea that you have. And that is, why don't we have an episode or in a series, sorry, exploring Peridia, exploring this brand new galaxy that was introduced in Ahsoka. Obviously, we don't necessarily have like the story premise for this. It's just a what is out there, what is the possibilities, what happens to make the planet they landed on pretty or whatever, making the planet look the way that it does. Because clearly, it seems that in Ahsoka, there's so much just little lore nuggets that are established there. Of you have the great mothers that are there. There's clearly like the ruins of the Night Sister kingdom or whatever. You have the Mortis god, faces stones carved into those mountains. You have Balin Skull saying, like, are they seeking power? Are they fleeing from something? Like, is there a power that they're fleeing from? And we're gonna find out some of those answers in Ahsoka season 2, I imagine. But regardless, the fact that there is another galaxy existing in Star Wars where the Force is present, the Force is alive and well, and there's connections from that galaxy to our present galaxy, leaves plenty of room for original storytelling. So why, do you think? I'm guessing you think this is a good idea that they might want to explore, or was this just more of a, what do you think about it?
Listen, this is something that would excite me very much. Creative, like on a creative level. On a business level, there's like many arguments to be made here against it. Like from people not knowing what this is, from people being, from how do you market this? Because do you have lightsabers? Do you brand this as Star Wars? Do you like? what is exactly like, and if you start using the Force, then you have to really make sure that people understand that this is even outside, not even outside the Skywalker saga, this is outside of the galaxy. So marketing wise, it gets like really convoluted.
Mhm.
And I just
A
like,
long time ago in another galaxy, far, far away.
right, but I guess sometimes people to some degree want familiar, not just familiarity, but like some level of something not very complicated. Doesn't even have
Hmm.
to be familiar, but has to be something easily explainable. And like this would, uh, I think part of that's part of partly why Diagonal didn't work as much is because they didn't properly explain what this show was.
Hmm. 100%.
And I think that you run into that risk with something like exploring something outside the galaxy. At the same
Hmm.
time, this is a empty canvas for
Hmm.
anything storytelling. Yes, you have some seeds planted where you can have something like, the Night Sisters or something
Hmm.
like purely, fantasy level with the Mortis gods or that planet, but at the same time, that is one planet inside a whole galaxy. So what else is
Right.
out there? And do they have a what is the government like? What is the history of that place? Like there is a whole new galaxy ripe for storytelling and just for, you know, pretty much like that seems like a perfect scenario for a new writer coming into Lucasfilm. Like, I
Hmm.
have this idea for a Star Wars show, but it
Something
doesn't
brand
fit
new.
into the Skywalker saga. Guess what? We
Hmm.
have a new place for you to tell it. It's
Okay.
like, it's sort of, uh, is it Visions? Yeah, Visions, like the anime series, like that in live action, basically. Like, you have a whole
Hmm.
new galaxy to tell whatever stories you like.
There's no rules necessarily. It's you can pretty much do whatever you want, whenever
Exactly.
you want, with whoever that you want.
And even more than like, I was a bit disappointed how um, how the planet looked in Peridia. Like, it just looked very
Boring.
not very yeah, exactly, boring. Like from the color palette to the actual landscapes or whatever, like it just looked, rocky and desert. Like what else is out there in that galaxy
It
that
just looked like
defines?
the place we spent the entire episode on Obi-Wan Kenobi season on when they got off the city planet on episode 2, and their episode 3 just kind of looked like a darker version of that planet in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, exactly,
rocky,
exactly. Yeah,
grassy fields.
yeah. So what if you go to another planet where there's like mountains upside down, or
Hmm.
something like
Like
something
Pandora.
completely crazy that you didn't think was possible in the Star Wars galaxy, but perhaps in this other galaxy is possible. So
Hmm.
there is like a completely fresh new canvas for you to play in, and also
Hmm.
something that still feels familiar because it exists inside the same franchise. So you still have the wiggle room to play around with the same rules and break them if you want to.
Hmm. Okay. I love this idea. My biggest holdup is just after how badly it seems like the acolyte was completely botched, and then skeleton crew people aren't watching. I'm just wondering if we're gonna pitch a new show, we have to have a new show. How are they going to, like you said, the marketing problems? How are they going to even begin to market this? And they're like, oh no, this is the brand new galaxy. There's a brand new galaxy. Oh, in Ahsoka, in this first season of Ahsoka, they introduced this idea of a brand new galaxy, and then you're thinking, oh, do I need to go watch Ahsoka to watch this? And I think
Right.
you get into a bit of some issues there. But so this is something that I've been wondering is what level in terms of streaming can Star Wars take off? Because we've seen incredible highs from Star Wars that make me think, like Mandalorian season 2, made me think that anything's possible with Star Wars streaming. Like this, that anything is possible. But then since then, with a lot of shows, we've seen just incredible lows that I would have never thought Star Wars could get to in streaming. That there is no one that cares about any of these shows to keep it relevant at all in the streaming world. And that kind of shook me a little bit as a Star Wars fan. It made me wonder where exactly does Star Wars sit? And I think I've kind of come to the place where I kind of view it as Star Wars is not this, definitely not some impenetrable viewership, monster, but in the streaming world. And they really do have to take care in the stories that they are choosing to tell, because they clearly do. They can't just get a win by putting something out there now with the Star Wars, name attached. So it just comes down to, is the initial buy-in high enough to help this show get off to a rocky start? Because this would be the kind of show I think you would want to build an audience quickly. Like, people are like, oh my goodness, this is actually a really exciting story. You need to check this out. And the word of mouth kind of builds it up over time, because I don't think you would necessarily have from the jump, a bunch of people raring to go, because there is not that, like you said, familiarity or even comfort, in the beginning of what you're about to get into.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that like this is the perfect. Yes, create excuse me, business-wise, I completely agree that this isn't the most logical idea. And yes, in an era where every studio is looking for what franchise do we have in our catalog that we haven't explored yet, or at least not
Right.
in the last 3 years. Doing something in Star Wars
Mhm.
but completely outside of uh, what we know so far. Yes,
Yes.
it's risky as hell. At the same time, if you are talking about, doing something in the Old Republic, because that feels very different from the Skywalker saga, and you have a lot of area time to play around in, and you have a lot of different options to tell stories. Like this is that elevated to the
Mhm.
to infinity, basically.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, there's a problem marketing wise, but if there's a super exciting idea behind this, let's say, from whatever writer, like let's say, I mean, just uh, speaking bold here, imagine Bo Willimon says,
Mhm.
I want to move on from the Mangold movie to like doing something also completely fresh on this galaxy. Do you really say no to him?
Probably not.
So
Probably not.
I guess the bottom line is that I think that creatively they should explore this galaxy. I
Okay.
also think they will at some point. I don't know if like a miniseries or an
Mhm.
episode of Ahsoka season 2, like fully devoted to this galaxy or whatever. But I do think that Filoni is not introducing this galaxy and just leaving it there. Like
Right.
there's
I
something
I think
else.
for me, I'm gonna say no right now, but I think I want to reserve judgment, because I want to wait and see a little bit more of Ahsoka season 2. Like,
Right.
do they answer more questions? Do they ramp up a little bit more here? Does it, because it's possible we could have a movie centered in part in this galaxy as well. Like, there could be part of Filoni's movie taking place over here in, this part of the galaxy, or this new galaxy as well. We don't know if, is Ahsoka going to make her way back, or is what's going to happen on that
Oh,
side
come on, she
either.
is.
I agree, but I'm saying that, like, could she not make her way back by the time of Filoni's movie? Like, is there part of it that we see that other galaxy in his movie as well, and it's this, we have two galaxies at once in a movie?
Well,
That's where I'm wondering.
I mean, I guess we
I
know
don't think
that
so.
she is dead by the rise of Skywalker, so that negates a lot of theories. But we could also see
Maybe.
a scenario where she sets up base moving forward in that galaxy, even though she goes back to a regular galaxy, then moves back once the conflict is resolved in Filoni's movie. Maybe, I
Mhm.
don't know.
My headcanon is that Ahsoka never dies, and she was just, chilling somewhere,
That's also
and hanging
possible,
out. And you know what?
and you
Ray was
can.
listening to the voices, and Ahsoka was just like, "Oh yeah, something's going on." Yep, you know, I'm with you, Ray. I'm with you, Ray. Just doing a little force check in. No, she's probably dead by that time, and we haven't seen the end of her story. And I've been telling people there's no way that Dave Filoni is gonna make a movie without Ahsoka. So she's gonna survive season 2 of
Oh
Ahsoka and be
yeah,
in that movie. So
no doubt.
so yeah, I think I just want to reserve a little bit on this one. I really love the idea, but I want to see a little bit more. What are we gonna do in Ahsoka season 2 and beyond, even because we might have this galaxy in the movie as well. So last idea was Luke Skywalker Jedi Academy sets right in the Mandoverse timeline. They've already shown a willingness to bring Luke into live action. He showed up in Mandalorian season 2. We see him in the book of Boba Fett. The deep fake look for Luke, and we see him with Grogu. And a lot of people, whenever that episode of Book of Boba Fett came out, and they saw the improvement in the technologies just from Mando season 2 to what they did in the book of Boba Fett. There was a few weeks where what a lot of people were talking about was, ooh, does this mean we could get a Luke Skywalker show? Does this mean that Luke Skywalker stories are back on the table here, so to speak? And I will lean towards yes on this if they choose to recast Luke. So in reality, it's going to be no, because they're not going to recast Luke. They're just going to keep playing with this technology. And I do not want to see a show of deepfake Luke Skywalker leading the way. That's not something that I would particularly love to see.
I also don't think they should do this with no, a deep fake look. Excuse me, the term was slipping my mind. A deep fake look, both business-wise and creatively. Like business-wise, this is gonna be torn apart from day one. Like especially in an age where there is some online controversy somewhat made up, but still blowing up about something like the Brutalist using AI for some, tweaking some lines in Hungarian. Like whenever you speak of using a deep fake, which is essentially AI, to um, to bring Luke Skywalker into as the main character
Mhm.
of a miniseries, like this is gonna be torn apart. So, creative,
Mhm.
business-wise, you do not want anything to do with this.
What's the difference between what's the difference? Why is someone allowed to say? Because there's a lot of people I think that are like that, like so I don't want a deep fake Luke. I think a lot of people are like that for a series, but then if it was he has a 20-minute role in a movie, they're like, oh yeah, deep fake, like that's fine, that's like fine for Luke. Why is one okay and one not? Like I would prefer them, if they're gonna use Luke at all, outside of a Rogue One Leia where she just says one word, and you have it right there for a second. Like I would prefer a complete recast, and I'm still mad that she even had a word in Rogue One. I wish they had just left it as her getting the plans, and we know who it is without even seeing her face or hearing her talk. We know that's Princess Leia getting the Death Star plans. I just don't like the precedent they set, there either. But why is one okay and one not? Because I think there's a lot of people that are saying they're perfectly fine with the deep fake Luke for a movie.
I think that I personally think the conversation has changed since the Book of Hobbit. I don't think that's as okay now as it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any substantial evidence to support it, but I have that suspicion that more people would turn on
Mm-hmm.
that idea that they did back then. And the
Okay.
difference is that whenever it is the main character rather than a 20-minute cameo at most, it's like it's gonna be, analyzed to 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 the end of time. Like,
Mm-hmm. What if
um,
they do the de-aging thing like we saw them do with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where they de-age Harrison Ford down? The voice sounds a little bit off because you can hear old Harrison in there with the younger Indy. But what if they did something like that with Mark Hamill, and it's still Mark, he's there, but you have the de-aged Mark, and they try to alter the voice a little bit to make him sound younger? What about that? That's a little bit, this is a different conversation. I still don't want that. I'm still against that too, but
Yeah, it's difficult for me to answer. I don't want any of this, so it's difficult for me to say how other people would react to this. Um, I just have the feeling that, especially with AI now being super present in our lives and in our conversations, I think people are craving for uh, something they cannot notice. And
right.
a young look would be noticeable just because you know that this is not real, unless they
Mhm,
recast him.
mhm,
So whenever you're 100% sure that this is CG,
mhm,
I think that instantly, switches
mhm,
something on in your brain.
mhm.
But I don't know.
This mhm,
This is a very complicated conversation because at the same time, like this speaks highly of this is like we've been using CG in movies for 2 decades now. Like
mhm,
computer generated images have been present and sometimes even more than non-CG in our movies for like 25 years now. So like, how is that different from, having a main character? Like, why is it different from having Thanos in Infinity War being the main character and having Luke in a Star Wars series be CG? Like, what is the
mhm.
difference? I guess it's more like uh, you're put off by the technology because this is a human,
Right.
but uh, on a basic level, there's no difference. Both main characters are CG.
Mhm,
So, yes, this is a very layered conversation. I don't think I want any of it. I
mhm,
personally don't, and recasting him or not, I don't see the huge appeal in telling this story. This is one of these stories that I think is best left untold, and that it is best for us to have different points of view of what happened, and so that each viewer or each fan can make their own minds
mhm,
about what happened there, as opposed to actually specifically telling
mhm.
what happened. That
Okay.
is my own impression, and that
Mhm,
is my reasoning why they shouldn't do this. At the same time, uh, if there is an actual story to tell, and I don't mean plot wise, I mean story wise, like an actual arc for Luke to embark on in a series about leading a new Jedi Academy, then I'm open for it, maybe,
mhm,
if there's some actual meat to that bone.
mhm.
But yeah, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I don't want this either unless if they did a live or sorry, if they did an animation show and they were able to use Ben Solo and give me some Luke Ben Solo adventures, watch the corruption of Ben Solo happen leading up to, the Force Awakens when Luke decides to go away from everything. That would be something I would be interested in, just with the there's less stress on an animated show, I think, with this versus all eyes will be on Star Wars if you do a live action adaptation of this show.
But for me, like doing a live action young Ben Solo, like a teenage Ben Solo, that is to me very problematic casting wise because Adam Driver is not 60 years old. He,
Hmm.
he doesn't qualify as a, he wouldn't be cast in a role as a 16-year-old, but he has such a distinct look that if they cast anyone, you're gonna be immediately put off by this guy does not look at all like Adam Driver. And we
Right.
saw an Adam Driver, a young Adam, not young Adam Driver, a young Ben Solo in Last Jedi in the flashbacks,
Hmm.
who looked a lot like, Adam Driver because that was him. And casting someone else
Hmm.
in that
That's
same
why,
age
and that's why
range,
I've wanted. Yeah, this should be an animation unless you picked up
yeah, probably.
immediately from where we saw it in or a Book of Boba Fett, where you know Ben Solo is probably
Right.
just what it's like 5 years old at that point or something
Yeah,
like that, like where
probably
he's
so.
not even in the picture for another several years. And
Yeah.
the way that this would work too is you could go. in theory, with the live action show, you have this, and then maybe you go over to tell what Leia's doing over in the Senate with some of the New Republic things that are going on. I would like this preferably to stay in the animation sphere, but we're talking, live action projects. So if you had to rank, okay, so we have Palpatine Plagueis, Count Dooku miniseries, live action Clone Wars, Exploring Peridia, Luke Skywalker, Jedi Academy. Just 5 ideas. If you had to rank from 1 to 5 the categories, what are you most wanting to? What do you wish they would stay away from the most? How would you organize your five?
So bottom to top, stay away from the most by far Clone Wars, live action Clone Wars. Then I would say Jedi Academy, the Luke Skywalker Jedi Academy. Number three would be the Plagueis one, which is something that I would be intrigued by, but still a bit hesitant about.
Mm-hmm.
And then between the other two, it's a bit of a coin toss for me, but I'm gonna say number two would be Peridia, and then number one Count Dooku.
Okay, so we're very close. I am the same on my 5 and 4. Um, I would then go with Peridia number 3.
Okay,
Just right now, I want to see more. I want to see Ahsoka season 2 before I ask for more Peridia stories.
right.
Like, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be something to be said there that's going to either supercharge my excitement for more stories in this galaxy, or might, possibly they can completely satisfy that thirst. I don't know. I want to see that first before I go full fledged into yes, Peridia. At 2, I would say will be Plagueis and Palpatine. I love Darth Plagueis. I've always wanted more Darth Plagueis stories, but and I can't believe I'm saying this. Given 24 hours ago, I never even thought of this as something I'd be remotely wanting or interested in. But a safe bet, easy story to tell. There's clear meat on the bone here. The Count Dooku miniseries. It just you can get into Count Dooku's constructing of his own, lightsaber. He has a very, just like you mentioned, Adam Driver's distinct look. I think Dooku has one of the sabers that is so distinct
Right.
in the curvature of the hilt that it makes him always stand apart. Like you always know if you put 5 lightsabers on a table, you would always know which one was his. And I always thought that was interesting. You could have that to why he favors the saber he does in the forms. You have Yoda there. You have young Qui-Gon. You could get into all of those things that we know about, so like we know of them, but we don't really know anything that happened there. And then live action Asajj Ventress as well. You could even sneak in some Clone Wars stuff for those live action the Clone Wars people. You could sneak in the end of that being something that happens in Clone Wars. I don't know. You could still sneak that in as well. So that one actually would get me pretty excited. I don't know. I was never have guessed that 24 hours ago. This was not even a concept in my mind. And now I'm going to be sitting here waiting for the Dooku miniseries announcement at Celebration in April. Like that's the one I'll be looking forward to the most.
But what I think you mean is that 24 months ago, you wouldn't have thought about this because we've been planning this list for a while.
You're right. You're right. Ever since Disney Plus was announced and they, had the Mandalorian, then the next year they had the big panel when Kathleen did
Right,
the big panel. They announced their 10 stuff. We were like, all right, so taking those shows, let's figure out what we would like from
right.
that's not
And
on
we've
that
been
list.
waiting from the like, full
We've been waiting
disclosure, we thought
for.
about this list
We're
just two
recording
minutes
this
before.
on January 25th, 2025. We were waiting for 25/25 to actually
Right.
record this episode, actually. So yes, it could not have worked better recording this on a Saturday, January 25th. Speaking of which, I have to go watch some Young Jedi Adventures episodes because Luke and I are recording a podcast where we're talking about the last 3 episodes of season 2 of Young Jedi Adventures, for part 1 of season 2. I'm assuming they release the second part at some point. We have another Star Wars News Net Live episode that'll be coming out, in just a couple days after you. This will probably drop on a Tuesday, so Thursday, a couple days away from Star Wars News Net Live, which who knows. Last few weeks we've had random stuff get announced every which way. So Ryan Gosling was announced this week. So next week, I'm looking forward to talking about how Christopher McQuarrie is stepping in to do
Right.
some Star Wars project. Like that's at that point. We just got to keep going and escalating further and further. So I'm looking forward to that announcement that's going to be brought out soon. I can't wait. 2 weeks away, MegaCon. Can't wait here in Orlando. Miguel, Janelle, and I think are very close to signing on to a day and a place for our Spain wedding in 2026. So we'll be coming to visit you before you know it. Okay.
I'm
Just be
waiting.
waiting. It won't be long. It won't be long now. So, Miguel, appreciate it. Thanks for everyone. Check out Star Wars Newsnet for everything Star Wars. Like and subscribe to the channel. We'll give you another podcast here again soon. Until next time, everyone, remember, for light and life, we are all the Republic.